It's my pleasure to kick off the latest episode of our Talent Trailblazer TV series. I'm joined by our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Audra Jenkins. Thank you, Audra. Audra, Randstad has joined the leaders of the pack by adding 2 female executives to our board. This still isn't the norm. What do you think led us here, and why is now the right moment?
Thank you so much, Felicia. First of all, excited to be here today. I think first and foremost, when you look at the MSCI All Country World Index, women make up roughly 17% of all global board seats. As we evolve as a global society, I believe that more companies are recognizing the competitive advantage and business imperative of diversity and inclusion. So it's intrinsically linked to our employer brand, which means consumers, clients, and partners are holding corporations like Randstad accountable for spotlighting deficiencies in diversity and inclusion. Um, in tandem to that, it was a recent study put out by McKinsey and Company that showed that diverse companies are 15% more likely to outperform financially than their competitors. So there's a financial impact to it as well.
Absolutely. And we have the pleasure of working with so many renowned client companies from a wide variety of industries. When clients have taken that step to actively and thoughtfully increase female leadership, what benefits or transformations have we seen occur?
That's a great question, Felicia. I think the biggest benefit is certainly creating and transforming their culture, of one that is more open and accepting of women as leaders, which then fuels gender inclusion, which encourages female participation, not only in that company's workforce, but the global labor force as a whole. Other benefits is that it aligns the company more in tune with the shifting societal views of diversity. There are many campaigns out there and efforts calling for gender parity and advocating for women's rights in the workplace. And so companies want to make sure they're being very thoughtful and how they are appearing, from a brand perspective, but also, from a talent attraction perspective of being one that's, forward thinking and innovative where gender diversity is concerned.
Wow. Yeah. And, as a woman who is building my own management career at such a large company, it makes me extremely excited and optimistic to see women now stepping into big roles, roles that historically we've not seen women in before. How do you think that will change the world of work, not only for us, but for those who come after us?
Felicia, it's certainly an exciting time for diversity and inclusion and belonging. We've got a tremendous momentum and, more importantly, a spotlight on it now more than ever. And we must take that opportunity to keep pressing forward to make some real impactful change. I think really, when I think back to this topic, I think about Deloitte. They recently put out a study that said that 80% of respondents felt inclusion is a critical factor for choosing an employer. And 39% of those participants said they would leave their current employer for a more inclusive one. So, what that tells me is that this is of utmost importance now more than ever. And for women in all diverse groups, they want to see people who look like them in leadership positions.
Yeah.
And it's also a tremendous responsibility. We, as women leaders, like you and I, if we are the first one or the only one, because we have to pave the way of future leaders by not only advancing our own career, but being mindful about reaching back and pulling up someone and advocating and sponsoring them to help them advance their own career with advice and wisdom.
Yeah, sending the elevator back down, of course. Equality is obviously not some passing fad. So, what should companies be doing now to prepare their organizations for long-term culture change and continuing that momentum?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to uh, differentiate between equality and equity. So when you think about equality, that makes the assumption that everyone benefits from the same support. So if you and I were needing to go to Portugal and you spoke Portuguese and that wasn't my native language and I have to struggle. Now if they gave us equally a class on Portuguese, we're getting the same support, but is that really what's going to help me if you already have, you already have this as your native tongue, as an example?
Mm.
So equity says we give everybody the support they need. We both have to go on a trip to Portugal. You already are familiar. Maybe you just need a refresher on, some cultural norms and nuances. And I need a tutor to kind of get me into not only the cultural norms and nuances, but the basics of the language so that I'm not being offensive and, to anyone when I speak. So I think getting people what they need and the support they need where they are, you have to start where people are, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I think the second thing is that you got to create safe spaces. As you know, Felicia, very well, we have ready chats for that within Ronstadt, creating safe spaces where people can come and talk about diversity, inclusion, and belonging and not fear for any retaliation or, any repercussions of that because it's a safe space. Providing what we can do to do better to transform our culture and create a culture where everyone feels like they belong, they're valued and respected. And then I think the third thing is you need to identify the barriers. What's hindering, your diversity, inclusion, belonging journey? And there's a study that came out by SHRM that indicated that 33.3% of companies felt that their workforce diversity is sufficient, while another 32% had a general indifference toward diversity. And you and I know, Felicia, that that is inaccurate. When you don't recognize when you have an indifference, you don't recognize there's a gap, and that hinders the opportunity to create sustainable solutions, to impact culture, retention, and ultimately engagement. And then finally, I would say, diversity and inclusion is not just beautiful words on our external website. You have to have metrics and reportable goals, that you're tracking towards. What actions are you doing? It's action, that makes a difference. Good intention doesn't always lead to great outcomes, and we need to make sure we have actual plans in place to make that impact. And it starts at the top. I'm happy and proud to work at a company where, our CEO supports diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And that's where it starts.
Definitely. Definitely. I feel very privileged to work for the same company doing those things as well. So, you brought up something that reminds me, many companies are looking at strategies for tracking their diversity initiatives to make sure they're successful. To do so, they're looking for tools to help them source and track diversity recruiting and hiring. What are we working on to help clients achieve this objective, all while remaining EEOC compliant, keeping applicant data protected, and helping to remove bias from each step in the process?
That's an excellent question, Felicia. Thank you for that. I think we've got several solutions. First and foremost, we have the targeted talent marketing, which is used to attract diverse talent pools, with branding and insights. I think that's critical. It helps our clients and us to determine, where's the best place to go seek and source, those diverse talent. I think we also have many of our clients have diversity strategists that, particularly on my team, who customize strategies to fill those gaps with talent acquisition. And not only they're driving and leading, those diversity initiatives, but really working lock and step with, holistically across, where there's opportunities to make an impact. There's also, from a technology perspective, the Randstad Innovation Fund supports, many tools, one of which is Textio, that's ensuring job postings are written in inclusive language versus exclusive language, which discourages diverse talent from applying. We employ AI recruiter bots, to kind of make sure we always have a 24/7 engagement with candidates. That's the biggest opportunity. Just think about, when do candidates apply for jobs? If they're working a current job, they're not applying for jobs during the workday. They're doing it after hours or, on the weekends, or, sometimes they have free time. And with those AI recruiter bots, we're able to engage very quickly, to ask questions, make sure if they've got skills in their portfolio or resume that matches, some other opportunities, make sure to make them aware of that so we can match them to that talent. And then, again, with those targeted talent pools, making sure that you always have the talent ready, for our clients, but also for ourselves. So really excited about the things we're doing.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. So there've been a lot of companies recently announcing newly appointed, sometimes even their first chief diversity officer. You obviously being in your position, what are a couple of those initial challenges that these leaders might face, and how should they approach important topics with their internal teams?
That's an excellent question. Another great question, Felicia. I think first and foremost, I want to point out that, at Randstad, we're the first major staffing firm to have a chief diversity inclusion officer role. And as of this date, we're still the only staffing firm to have that, as a human capital provider. And I'm really excited that with those first comes the opportunity to kind of shape and trailblaze and innovate, our industry and reshape how we view diversity and inclusion. So I would say first and foremost, when it's the first time person in the role, I think we've got to look at what's top of mind. So right now, there's an outcry for social justice reform, economic equity, combating systemic issues plaguing diverse and marginalized communities. So helping leaders to navigate those discussions in the workplace with a formalized strategy is really first and foremost important. At our company, we created a DNI task force, a subset of our North American Executive Diversity Council, to determine, what are we going to do specifically, what actions we could take immediately to address. I also held leader roundtables, with each functional leader to talk about navigating, these tough conversations in the workplace, because avoiding it is not, and being silent is not the option. People really want to hear from our leaders on where they stand on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And I think those things are really important. I think more importantly, understanding the three strategic verticals that you're operating in as a new CDO, for our Ready team, which is the Randstad Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team. We have three verticals, which is workplace, marketplace, and business. So workplace is focusing on our workforce diversity and things we're doing to transform our own culture. Marketplace is focusing on our external branding and how we position ourselves so that we can be that diverse and inclusive employer, partner, and vendor of choice. So I think those things are important. And then business is how we operationalize diversity and inclusion. How do we make sure that it's part of everything that we do and touch, as our human forward brand promise? And I think that's really critical as well. So making sure you have the strategy, the vision, but also align that into the overarching vision and mission of values of your own organization is really critical. And being able to address those top of mind issues and help your leaders navigate those discussions.
It's wonderful. Audra, I've had the pleasure of listening to you speak before about your own personal challenges in the workplace, being a woman of color. And it really resonated with me, being a Hispanic woman who was raised in the South. So I would love to ask, what advice would you give women like me who are still building their careers and are looking for a way to push even further and build upon that framework that women like you have laid out for us?
That's a wonderful question, Felicia. Thank you. I would say a couple things. I think first and foremost is get a mentor, a mentor that can have a real honest dialogue with you as you're working through your career and help you get very laser focused on the things that you want to achieve. I think that's important because you've got to set a goal. It just can't be reaching for a specific job title. It has to be something that's meaningful and impactful to you and aligned to your own personal vision and values. I think that's important. The other piece of it is, get informed. I talk all the time on pay equity. That's something I think as women that we don't really do a great job with advocating for ourselves, for the right competitive pay, compensation practices. The World Economic Forum put out this year, as you know, their 2020 Global Gender Gap Report, and it said it's going to take 100 years to see gender parity. And that's something I think it's sad. It's really sad to think that that may not happen in our lifetime. And then there was another report that came out, that stated that women still earn 81% for every dollar that a Caucasian male earns in the same role, and it's much worse for women of color. Black women earn 61%, Native American women earn 58%, and Latinas earn 56% for every dollar. And I think that, that's really one of the biggest challenges. I think the second piece of it is making sure that, we're providing, once we bring in diversity, we don't just leave them there. You've got to be developed and develop into a career track, and advance in a company. One thing I'm really excited about that we started in North America is the RISE sponsorship program. We are sponsoring, our executives are sponsoring people to help develop their career plan and get them positioned and ready. So when opportunity does come up for advancement, they're in a good, they have somebody that's in the room advocating on their behalf when they're not able to be there. So that's something I think is important. The next thing I think that I would advise is to, think about how do we activate our collective power? One of the things that, when I look at a lot of the microaggressions that happen, over my own career, unfortunately came at the other hands of other women. And I think that we need to advocate to be allies for each other first. And I don't know that that's always happening. And I think that that's something, if we could do that, we could, really make a huge impact, powerful impact on gender parity and get there sooner than 100 years, what the World Economic Forum is predicting. And then finally, I think we need to learn how to use our voice. That's something I didn't learn early on in my career. I think that I wish I had someone to let me know that I had a voice. A lot of women feel like they don't have a voice, they're not being seen or heard. And I think that when you start using your voice and advocating for other women, I think that that's how you change that culture and transform, other people's lives. Maya Angelou has this great quote that says, "A woman who stands up for herself stands up for all women." So if we stand up for ourselves, we are essentially standing up for all women, and we've got to do that, to make a difference.
Audra, that's wonderful. Really, I personally am very grateful to women like you and those before us who have begun using their voices and use their voices not only for themselves, but for all of us. So thank you again, Audra, for joining us for this episode of Talent Trailblazer TV. We appreciate your expert insights, and until the next time.